I am very, very pleased, very honored to be able to present this material to the Jane Addams branch. I want to begin with talking about the goals of PEP. It stands for Project Enduring Peace, as all of you know. There are just two main goals. The first one is to spread the knowledge of something called peace systems, to define them the way we want to define them, and then to express the fact that they've had it existed in the past, they could exist again, and that's what we want to show with the video. We want to dispel the idea that you cannot end war. And this is I cannot overemphasize this. The video is basically the heart of PEP, because I spoke for about 10 or 15 years when I was doing a project called A Future Without War. Spoke to many groups in this country and in other countries. And I always asked them at the beginning, do you believe it's possible to end war? And I would count how many people were there, small groups, large groups. And then I would ask them, if you believe we could end war, would you put your hands up? And then I would count. This was the scientist of me. And I'd say, well, if you don't think you think it's a great idea, but you don't think we could end war, would you put your hand up? And I counted. The bottom line is, at least in the United States, 70% or more of people said, nice idea, but we can't do it. For human beings, human behavior is one of my areas of study. And for human beings, if they don't believe a goal is possible, they won't work for it. They won't donate money for it. They won't spend time on it. They won't come to a Zoom meeting when they already know that you can't end war. And so the first thing we have to do is rebut that false belief. So that's why we have this video. And it also illustrates, by the way, what a peace system would look like. People need a vision of, well, so where are we heading? What are we shooting for? What is it we're trying to make? And the video suggests a possibility for that as well. So that's one of the objectives. If that is your objective, and by the way, the ultimate goal for PEP is a treaty that prevents wars between nations. We're not dealing with civil wars. That's a whole different kettle of fish. But we can end wars between nations. We've tried before in the past, and that is our goal. And to get to that goal, the ideal situation would be to get a new peace treaty that works. In other words, an enforceable peace treaty between nations. Well, to get there, the best way to get there is to go to the United Nations, because that's where the origination, putting things in gear to get new peace treaty negotiations happen. So we have to get their attention, and we're doing it by getting this petition, which that's our second kind of thing that we do, is a petition asking the relevant world leaders to come together, get their act together, and let's do another series of treaty negotiations and make it enforceable this time. So that's it. PEP, one of the virtues of PEP is we don't have a lot of goals. We have one very big goal, but we keep it very simple, very stripped down. Two things. We want to get as many people as possible to see this video. And then secondly, we want to get as many signatures as possible on the petition. So with that in mind, it's now time for me to go to a screen share. If someone were to ask you, do you think it's possible for humans to stop making war? Would your answer be yes, or would it be no? What would be your gut response? If you say, I'd like us to end war, but no, it's not realistically possible, that response would match the no of the firm majority of citizens in the United States and probably most people across the entire planet. Consider that to undertake the building of prehistoric structures never before imagined by anyone. Structures we even now consider amazing, like the pyramids, or believing that your nation has the wherewithal necessary to send men to the moon and back. At least one person has the idea and persuades others that it can be done. For humans, belief in the possibility of success underlies action to do anything. belief also underlies anyone's willingness to spend their money or time supporting a project. Project Enduring Peace, or PEP, is a campaign dedicated to securing an innovative, sustainable peace treaty that will put an end to international wars. And with this video, we challenge the problem of disbelief. We'll consider 4 things that explain why and how there is a path to liberation. First point, peace systems. We have examples where humans decided to end or avoid war and succeeded. We'll briefly consider 4 peace systems. We also strongly recommend an 8.5-minute YouTube video entitled The Science of Peace Systems, A Path Away from War. Additional peace system examples are explained and illustrated, such as Switzerland and the Nordic Alliance. Second point, the existence of nonviolent and non-warring cultures. These prove that war isn't a genetically based inevitability. War is a learned, culturally sustained activity. Ending it will require us to change attitudes and behavior, something we're perfectly capable of doing. Third point, creating a peace system begins with an agreement between parties to never again make war on each other, and then laying out the foundation on which the peace system will function. The foundation can be a treaty, a constitution, or a series of agreements. The key isn't what you call it, it's laying it out and taking overt action. By the way, Star Trek fans may recall that in the Star Trek future, as opposed to the violent Star Wars future, there was no war on Earth. How did Gene Roddenberry imagine Earthlings achieving such a revolutionary accomplishment? Did he envision a world war so horribly devastating that amidst the smoldering remains, survivors came to the peace table where they at last established an Earth peace treaty? Fourth and final point, we address social paradigms, specifically a false paradigm that perpetuates war. So why is PEP's belief in our ability to end international wars realistic? In this 2012 article, anthropologist Douglas Fry defined peace systems as neighboring societies that do not make war on each other. These are not utopias. Their people have typical human disagreements, and they can be drawn into a war by warring cultures around them. But each found the means to settle disputes among them nonviolently. And the first thing they had to do, step 1, was to decide. They agreed that they would stop warring on each other. For us, in our time, step 1 must be the same. Citizens and leaders alike, we must agree to stop warring on each other. Project Enduring Peace believes achieving step 1 is possible because the global community is profoundly tired of war, is alarmed by the existential threats of modern war, and is therefore highly motivated to be united behind a movement demanding international peace that also brings a good news vision for how to achieve it. The Fry article looked closely at 3 peace systems: the Iroquois Confederacy of the Upper New York State, 10 indigenous tribes of the Upper Xingu River Basin in Brazil, and the remarkable example of the European Union, a 27-nation regional union. The United States is included here because it is a confederation of 50 states that don't make war on each other, and it shares key traits with the other peace systems. The story of the formation of the indigenous Iroquois Confederation in the northeast continental U.S. is a good illustration. Between 1450 and 1660 A.D., 3 visionary leaders emerged, possibly much earlier. This was a time of great warfare between tribes in that region. Legend and general research concur that it all came together because of 2 men and a woman, a man nicknamed the Great Peacemaker, another man whose name you may recognize, Hiawatha, and a woman they called the Mother of Nations. It's notable that several U.S. founding fathers used many elements of the Iroquois Agreement, describing how the peace relationship between the tribes would work when writing the United States Constitution. The 5 tribes created symbols to characterize their union. For example, The great peacemaker had a vision of a long house big enough for the fireplaces of all 5 nations, a symbol of living together in peace. They created a tree of peace with an eagle perched on top. The tree represented the people. The roots symbolized their wish that the peace would spread to other nations. The eagle served as a warning to be vigilant against anything that would weaken or break the agreement. They understood the danger, that if people begin to take the peace for granted, they may lose it. Of noteworthy and critical importance, Iroquois women were highly influential. They were the heads of households. They nominated whatever man would represent them in the Council of Chiefs. In virtually all cultures, women are more opposed to war than men are, and in the Iroquois community, decision-making was gender-balanced. This perhaps explains the Iroquois receptivity to ending war and remaining at peace. Evidence in many contexts continues to emerge that inclusion of women in decision-making in public affairs and in peacemaking efforts fosters outcomes that reduce physical violence. Keep in mind that Fry closely examined 3 completely different cultures, thus finding common traits associated with success regardless of culture. Consider examples of these shared traits. First, peace systems create an overarching social identity. For example, for the EU and the US, they created their flags. Or for the Iroquois, it was the Tree of Peace. A peace system may create a national anthem, or a motto like the EU's United in Diversity. These systems make and maintain interconnections among the subgroups. For example, they encourage intermarriage between individuals from different groups. Or they may establish a trading system in essential goods. Peace systems create or preserve interdependence. For example, by creating a shared currency like the euro or dollar, or by setting up or strengthening a trading system. Pooling coal and steel production was an early step in forging the EU because it dealt with possible French and German competition. Peace systems create symbolism and ceremonies that reinforce peace. 3 holidays in the United States are shared by everyone: Independence Day, Thanksgiving, and Memorial Day. All the Chingu honor the deaths of all of their chiefs. Another explained, "We don't make war, we have festivals. We sing, dance, trade, and wrestle." Members of peace systems create superordinate institutions for management of conflicts among them. The Iroquois created a Council of Chiefs. The modern world has the International Court of Justice, which unfortunately isn't yet recognized by all nations, but could be. In the United States, the Supreme Court serves that function. Fry and colleagues recently added a 7th trait peace systems share. They select leaders that value and champion peace. Arguably, citizens regularly failing to ensure that their leader is a champion of the peace would be wise to recognize a warning that their peace is being dangerously taken for granted. Note importantly that global peace system or Earth peace system doesn't mean global government. Global government is something unlikely to ever be acceptable to most nations. What is envisioned is confederation. Nations will maintain their identity while also agreeing not to make war. France is still France, Italy is still Italy, Texas is Texas, and New York is New York. It's possible to envision an Earth peace system. Once established, well-constructed peace systems can endure. The United States has endured 247 years with only one very close call to avoid breakup. Reality is that humans prefer to live in peace. An Earth peace system based on an enforceable treaty has an excellent chance of lasting. If we're successful, maybe what we would be doing is laying the foundation of that Star Trek future of no war on Earth. A worthy cause to pursue, some would say a sacred cause. That now brings us to nonviolent and non-warring groups, which further prove that war is not a genetically inescapable inevitability, something that's hardwired into human nature. Some societies live well without it. There are communities that live within warring societies: Amish, Quakers, Jehovah's Witnesses, Baha'i. The dots show distribution areas of over 87 cultures anthropologists designate as nonviolent and non-warring. You may know the Hopi of the U.S. Southwest, and Laplanders who prefer to be called Sami. A woman of a Sami family in northern Finland owns the largest herd of reindeer in the nation. The Sami president is a woman. Again, note that in nonviolent societies, women are characteristically respected, even highly respected. Norwegians have been added to the category of nonviolent cultures, and in 2022 their parliament was 45% women. These examples just described are not theoretical, they're real, and they represent hope for what can be our reality. Which brings us to paradigms. Paradigms are beliefs that underlie any group's common shared worldview. As a global community, we all will be better off if we get off this deadly war treadmill. And to do that, we must free ourselves from a false paradigm that supports the war machine. That false belief is that war is inescapable. Many paradigms are unexamined, things we grow up believing. They are so deeply seated that virtually all people, without thinking, make everyday plans based on them. The sun will rise in the east. People may not always be telling you the truth. But paradigms can also be powerful while still being wrong. For example, the earth is flat. Women are too delicate and too lacking in intellect to engage in politics or war. There's no such thing as a nonviolent culture. Our dominant culture is driven by the belief that war is inescapable. It's what humans do. So we prepare for it. We manufacture weapons, maintain standing armies, develop ever more sophisticated nuclear bombs and artificial intelligent robot warriors. And we worry, worry, worry. The belief in war's inevitability by leaders and citizens alike feeds the war industry and tragically becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it leads people to think that the best we can do is find ways to make wars survivable. PEP's answer is no. The best we can do is stop. And step one is to decide we will no longer make war on each other. Then we assemble our leaders and insist that they fashion an agreement to that effect. We need to let it sink in that we have peace system models for how to escape the war trap. And knowing from experience that there must be consequences for treaty violators, this time we fashion a treaty that includes serious measures to ensure compliance. In a relatively short time, this agreement will deliver enormous payoffs. This graphic shows tentacles taking money from human welfare and survival and feeding it into the war industry, building and maintaining nuclear weapons in perpetuity, establishing and maintaining military bases everywhere, etc., etc. When nations become assured that they will not be attacked or invaded, those extravagantly expensive essentials sooner or later are seen to be and do become unneeded. Citizens realize their resources can now be better invested elsewhere, like dealing with climate change, ending poverty, providing quality, universal education for all children, tending to the health of Earth's ecosystems, eliminating causes of civil wars, reaching for the stars. Resources saved can be used to fashion a less violent, more nurturing, just, and egalitarian future. PEP's singular goal at this time, however, is securing an anti-war treaty. First things first. And developments during the last 100 or so years have created a unique window to end international wars that previous efforts such as the Kellogg-Briand Pact, the League of Nations, and even the United Nations could not. First, the invention of sophisticated means of global communication and spying gives us the ability to detect potential violators and proactively take actions to deter them. Second, the rise globally of influential and powerful women and women's groups fed up with war can provide focused, unrelenting energy to lobby for a commitment to end war. And third, we now understand people power. Rapid global communication and the internet enable ordinary citizens to coordinate. Global citizens fed up with war can use people power to pressure reluctant leaders to go to the peace table and ultimately to sign the treaty. This is, of course, a huge and complex challenge. Many religious and spiritual leaders call for peace. Thousands of organizations state that the search for peace is part of their mission. But reality is that for this long-standing evil, there is no simple or quick fix. It's distressing but not surprising that many people have no hope. And those activists who have not given up hope are fragmented and frustrated, fighting the many different tentacles of the war machine. What Project Enduring Peace offers is to focus the global community united on securing a treaty or other agreement, a single goal with vast positive ramifications. We're deciding what kind of future we leave to those who come after us. And the wonderfully good news is that we have the needed knowledge. We have the needed resources. What's required is focused action to bring global leaders to the peace table. United, we can fashion a magnificent human future to match our magnificent planet. If you want to share in this campaign, go to projectenduringpeace.org to find out how. The first thing I want to do is introduce the PEP team that has been able to come this evening. The first one is how to put this delicately. This is the person I know who is the oldest person who in my life that I know, and that's Linda Wexler. Linda and I taught science when we were in our 20s at the same school. We shared an office, she chemistry and me biology. And then the other person, Sue Zeifman, is Linda's sister. Sue was for many, many years head of marketing for Apple. So this is a woman who has a lot of knowledge in how to market and try and sell a product. And our product that we're selling is certainly a very worthy product. And then my other friend, Barbara Villasenor. And Barbara Villasenor and I have known each other for quite a few years. And I know her because she and I both are book writers, and Barbara is a book publisher. And so those are the members of the PEP team who are here this evening. What you would do after the video is would be time for discussion. You might ask them to go get another drink or some more refreshments, sit back down, and then ask questions. A suggested question that you might start out with is on the party page, which is to ask them, what did I write down here? What surprised or excited you about in the video? You can ask them that and then see what they have to say. And then ask them what questions they want asked. Does any of you want to ask a question right now based on what you thought about the video or from the video, or do you see problems with showing the video?
I thought it was fantastic. And we'd be proud to post this one too at Founding Mothers YouTube if you want us to. It was great, Judith. What an effort. So professionally done. It was a joy.
Thank you. Thank you. The main thing that I would encourage you to do is when they ask questions, be sure that you don't wander away from subject matter that was covered in the video. And that covers a lot of subject matter, that video. You could watch that video many times and still get stuff out of it. So, but there's so much about war and ending war and questions that could have about war that have nothing to do with the video. And I really encourage people to say, let's stick to things that were kind of covered in the video. And then whatever they ask, say, was there anything in the video that addressed that? for example, one of the questions that might come up was will you ever get any of these leaders to go to a peace table? And I can ask you guys, what is the video's answer to that? Anybody think they want to know what the answer to that is from the video? How do you get them to go to the peace table? You want to raise your hand if you've got an idea? Yes, Tina.
Yeah, I believe that the motivation was people power, if the way I read it. Yeah.
That's it.
Now lower my hand.
That's why we need 100,000 signatures, because they represent the core of the people power that will be required. There is another subtler thing that's on our side that's sort of in the video. What is that? Can anybody think what that would be? That would get people to insist on the leaders going to the peace table? Okay. It says at the very beginning that the people in the world are sick and tired of wars. The whole global community. In the last century, we've learned about atomic bombs. And we started making some peace treaties back then because there was the threat of a really, civilization ending bomb or something. Maybe even a chemical a weapon that might get loose. But it was sort of a very theoretical thing. And in the past, there were only a few nations that had them. My goodness, in the time that we've let fly, there are now many nations with these atomic weapons. And we have now Iran thinking that maybe their only solution to their problem is they absolutely must have an atomic weapon, an atomic bomb. So that the fact that the people of the world, not the leaders, but the people of the world really, really would be behind this movement. With the right kind of promotion, you can get a tremendous response from the people all over the planet. Anyway, that's the video, and then you would have a discussion and eating a little bit and talking. Now would be time to go sign the petition. They get out their cell phone, or they get out their little laptop, or their iPad, and you tell them to type in projectenduringpeace.org. They do that. They're on projectenduringpeace.org. And I think if I can do that, and you're on the web page, and then you can simply scroll down to the link. Okay, as simple as that. They should be delighted at the fact that they can get to the video easy right here. They want to watch it again and again in a project or whatever, and then they can also go to now, click on the change.org link, and we have the peace petition, and we can say we have 401 now. We topped the 400 mark, which was very, very exciting. And of course, if we started giving these parties regularly, if every WILF woman in the United States that belongs to one of these branches would give a party once a month, that we would get huge numbers of signatures right away, just from the WILF membership. But that's just one way we can do it. And we can get way past 400 pretty fast. And we have some ideas we're working on. The PEP team is working on other ideas, how we can bring in other groups to be willing to sign the petition as well. Just sign the petition. That's all. Not help us do anything else. Just sign the petition. The page gives you the petition. They ask you to give the issue, which we wrote out. A lot of it was done by Sue and Linda, and it's very well done. And then you go down a little bit further, and it now gives you the petition down here on the lower left, and it states exactly how the petition will read. And then they can go over and sign the petition over here. Now, this is not what they will see at this point when they get to their page, because there'll be nothing in this area on the upper right here, because this would be where you would sign. There will be a thing saying sign. I no longer remember what it is, because if you go to your device and you sign your name here, then what you see when you come back again will never be an opportunity to sign your name again. That's the way change.org keeps down the number of people that would want to sign once and then come and sign again and then have their friends sign again. It doesn't work that way. In order to prevent that as much as possible, once a device is used for a sign-in, you can't sign in on that device again. So that's one of the things you want to warn them at the party. Once you sign in, you won't be able to come back and sign in again, and you cannot have everybody that you know come and use your device. They're going to have to go and get their device to sign in. And then the other thing that you can tell them when they're on this page is, by the way, when you sign, you will get updates now and then from change.org. And we make sure that there will never be more than one a month. We don't want to flood people with emails. As we've already mentioned today, people are tired of emails. We get too many. But a lot of people would like to know how the petition is doing. They don't have to read it if they don't want to, but they might be really curious. Well, where are we now? And when they come and check in, they'll see how far the petition is each time. How many signatures do we have? So that's what's involved in getting them to go personally on their device to sign the petition. Now let's go to one last thing. I'm going to go to the party guide again. So I'm going to screen share the main thing that I use so often, which is my big old website. And I'm going to go click over. Now, do you see that I'm sharing my old website?
Yes.
Homepage?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go down to Project Enduring Peace on the menu bar, and then I'm going to go to throw a party. And because I just want to scroll down, we've been through all of this stuff, the invitation, the welcome, the party checklist about the guests arriving, visiting the PEP website, that you want to show them around. You want to get them a little familiar with all the things that are available to them on the PEP website. Not all the things, but some of the things available. We view the video, you have a discussion afterwards, they sign the petition. You can point out, by the way, that it's a 3-year campaign to get 100,000 signatures. You should definitely share that with him, because we need that much to get the attention of something like the United Nations General Assembly. Because people will actually have asked me, how come you pick 100,000? And it's because I did a little research about petitions, and most petitions do not work. They do not work because they either get too few signatures, and most importantly, because the people who start them don't carry through. They don't hang in there, they don't promote them, they don't work on them. And about the numbers, for example, they point out, if you want to get your local police department or city hall to do something, you might just need to get 10,000 signatures on a petition for them to do something. But if you wanted the state of California to do something, and you got to get enough people to get the attention of the state of California, now you may be required to get something like 20,000 or 30,000 or 50,000. If you want to get the attention of something like the United States government or UN General Assembly, start with shooting for 100,000 signatures. That's where the signature suggestion for 100,000. If we could get 200,000 people power build up, that would be great. But that's where what we're shooting for. And just to make it realistic, I think we should put some pressure on. We've picked 3 years. And a reason of picking 3 years is because it certainly could not be done in 1, and probably couldn't be done in 1.5. But with the important kind of imperative kind of promotion and pushing from a number of organizations who finally get behind this whole idea of getting the world leaders to negotiate a treaty, we could get 100,000 signatures in 3 years, or come very close to it, maybe even more. So you can point that out to them, what we're shooting for and why it's 100,000. You may or may not want to read the petition aloud, but certainly don't make them feel pressured to sign it. You know, they don't have to sign the petition. You're here. If you agree with it, you know, it would be great if you would sign it and join in with the actual action. This is an action. We're not talking theory. We're not talking about just this is an idea. If you want to do an actual action to move this forward, this is your chance. All you have to do is sign. Don't have to even pay money. All you have to do is sign. And you could remind them that if they don't sign right then, they may forget to come back, which we think would be a shame. Finally, there's a section at the bottom that's called Do Something More. I don't know how long these parties will take, but let's say you want a short one, you know, 45 minutes, an hour's party. That's you can't do much more than that. But let's say you really want to throw a party and you have food and drinks and they come, and afterwards, one thing I did when I went to a recent signing party, signing out postcards, that's what they had. They had 3x5 cards that people could sign and send to senators and stuff like that. I was thinking it would be great if you, at the end of a party, very simply give people 3x5 cards, say 5 or 10, like a 3x5 card, and ask them to put down the names of 5 to 10 people that they can think of right now that they are going to go out and tell about this webpage and the video and the petition they can sign. Because this is a hopeful message. If you're talking to people who are depressed out of their mind, and you say, there's actually good news that we could get behind, something that could happen, and you're going to direct them to the PEP website and tell them about the link to the video and the link to the petition. Give them a 3x5 card and a bunch of colored pins, and they can take those with them. They can also, you can invite them to write a letter to UN personnel that are critical if you do it for doing something like this. And I provided the addresses for the 3 most important people. Many of the senators that come from, the ambassadors that come from different nations, PEP is trying to reach out to these ambassadors, and it's not an easy task. It's very difficult, but we're working on it and getting better. We eventually hope to be kind of getting back to them on a regular basis. But these 3 people, this is the Secretary General of the United States, Antonio Guterres. Send your own personal little letter or note to him and tell him that what you know about peace systems and the potential for having a peace treaty that can end wars, international warfare, and you want him to get his General Assembly ginned up to start negotiations. The next person is Seema Bahous. She is the executive director of UN Women, and I pick her out because UN Women are key. And by the way, the video makes, I hope, very clear that women are powerful in the part of motivating all this. We have to get women activated. They can be the driving force behind getting this movement going. Of course, all men are welcome, but the director of UN Women might be a person to send it to, because they have a whole series of things that they have learned about. You cannot have peace. You cannot make peace between two small countries, or peace between any groups of people, unless you tend to get women involved. You might be even able to get the peace, but if you want the peace to last, you have to have women involved. So the UN Women, and they have a big research section. They have resources available. They could get, if you write the right kind of letter, they could get interested in saying, they also want to support encouraging the General Assembly to start peace treaty negotiations again. And then the last one is Izumi Nakamitsu. She is the Undersecretary General and the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs at the United Nations Offices for Disarmament Affairs. Linda and Sue, you might be interested. I found out where her offices are. They are right next door to the hotel where we stayed. 405 East 42nd Street. They were right next door. I tried to get in there, but you can't see one of these people, an ambassador or any from the UN, unless you have a an appointment. So you can get through the door, but then they stop you in the lobby and say, do you have an appointment? And if you don't have an appointment, you can't even get in the elevator. Anyway, two more things you can suggest to them is that they buy a PEP t-shirt that would spark conversations. And we are working on the design for that t-shirt right now so that we could have a t-shirt on sale where that if you buy this t-shirt, you kind of are a walking advertisement for this vision. And then lastly, we had thought about making peace bracelets at one of these parties. I'm not so sure how that will fly. I don't know how to make one, but they're nice. You can put letters on peace bracelets, that you wear on your arm. And then when you're out and about in town and people say, oh, that's an interesting bracelet. What does PEP stand for? Or why does it say peace? Or you can put any initials you want on there, but it can become a conversation thing, because we need to get the word out as many ways as possible. And then 2 final requests. Again, at the end, ask them to donate. Make clear that the donations are tax deductible and that donations are the engine that is required to make this whole thing go far and fast. The more donations we have, the farther and faster it'll go. The fewer donations, the longer it will take, if ever. So ask them to donate whatever they're able. And then especially say, even better still, host your own party. Bring more people in and get them involved. And maybe some of the people in your party they will go out and throw a party, and we can spread by word of mouth. Word of mouth is the best advertising there is. You cannot buy it. It is the finest advertising in the world, and it's free, word of mouth. So get them to, after they've been there and they like the idea, say, go out and talk about this. And then finally at the bottom, you have to send us feedback. If you're a hostess, you let us know what went well, what didn't go well, and especially provide a quote or a story we can use for promotion. Promotion is the name of the game. We got to go promote this. So, and you can fill it in down here on the bottom. Your name, the number who's came, how many signed, and under comments and suggestions, you could give us a nice quote. That's it, ladies. That's it.
Thank you so much, Judith.
It's been my pleasure. It's been very patient with us trying to figure out how to do all these things.
I will take questions, of course, and then any announcements. So
yeah, Cheryl has her hand up.
Did you mention that we have $40 grants available for a person who holds one of these parties for them?
It's in my notes. It was in my notes, but I thought I've been going on too long already, but it's right there.
Let me say that the Disarm Committee has put up $200 to be divided 5 ways into 5 $40 grants, mini grants, that a person, a WILF member holding one of these parties, needing a little bit of help to buy the refreshments, for example, to induce the people to come, having promise of some cake or some hors d'oeuvres. So when we are convinced that you really have done or about to do the party, we will disperse you $40 to a branch.
Thank you for mentioning that.
So the Disarm Committee has allowed 5 of those. It has been announced in our e-news, a couple of e-newses ago, but you here have the first, because you're here, if you're a branch member like Tina, you have a chance, Tina, to get $40. I guess nobody's asked yet. So thank you, because I think I have seen the film a couple of times now. It's a very convincing film, isn't it? That Judith has put together.
That is the comment I get from everybody, but I also get the usual from a man. When I showed it to him, he said it was wonderful, blah, 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 blah. But right away he said, I don't know how you'll get the people, the leaders to the peace table. So that would be a discussion thing that would come up. Someone will have missed the point. That it's all based on people power. And the fact that the world is weary and scared to death of the kind of wars we're now getting ready to perpetrate.
Oh, we're in.
Weary.
We're in.
Yeah.
So
right on.
is there a sample peace treaty?
No, that is a good question. And I have an answer for that, which is that I have information from and receive information from many, many, many peace groups of one form or another. And many of them have created what they call their manifesto or their list of demands, or they call it something else, how our vision of what this can be. And they actually spend a lot of time thinking about what should be in this peace treaty. But the problem I find with it is that many of them that I get, I like a lot of what they say, but I can't agree with some of the things they say. I don't agree with them. This is such a complex issue that when you start saying, well, we demand this thing be in the treaty, and somebody else think, no, I don't agree with that thing that you're demanding. I don't want to have that in the treaty. Yeah, it's a holdup. And it'll happen again, again, and again. So the project PEP has avoided that entirely. We do not take a whole bunch of different positions on anything. We take a position on one thing. Sign this treaty to get the leaders who will actually negotiate the treaty to go to the peace table. But I will share with you that in the back of my mind, and Diane and I are already working on it, we would like to create something I decided a couple of days ago to call it Peace Treaty Petition Advocates, a group called Peace Treaty Petition Advocates. These are people who advocate for getting a peace treaty. That's it. They're the Peace Treaty Petition Advocates. They saw the video, they signed the petition, and after we talked to them and we explained what we're doing and what we hope for, that we like to get, once we get a number of groups to sign in and get their people to start signing in, once we get a number that we will pick to be decided, when we have 100 of such groups as part of the advocacy group, or maybe we decide we need 500 groups to be part of the advocacy group, we would have our first big conference in which all representatives from those groups would be sent, and they would bring their ideas for what they do want to demand to be in the treaty. And between them, they would start sorting out. We represent civic groups. We are not political groups. And the people who will, the negotiators for the treaty will be political folks. They will be assigned from their community or their government, or however they're going to format the people who will be the treaty people. We represent civil society, and we as civil society can come together and agree on what we believe should be in this treaty. And I think that that's something we can offer as a goal for the advocates. At some point, to be decided, we will get together and everybody will bring their manifesto. They will bring their ideas about what it would take to have a lasting peace. And then they can negotiate and talk and write up something. And that will be what we get all of our members behind. That is what our people power will be behind from all these advocacy groups, is what we have agreed on. And we all agree on it. That's why we're all supporting it. We didn't have to come and agree on everything. Maybe we made some compromises. That would all be worked out in a big conference. But that is an intermediate goal that would be important for getting sufficient people power and getting the cooperation of these other groups. They want to have an input in what's going to be said to the leaders.
Cheryl has her hand raised.
Cheryl
Yes,
has her hand.
I do think, Ellen's question, what would the treaty look like? I do think you can do some research and discover some typical treaties. Okay, I wrote a 35-page article on them some time ago. They all start with a bunch of whereases.
Right.
And then they say, therefore, we agree that,
Right.
it doesn't have to be, you talk about people coming with demands. A treaty itself doesn't have demands in it. It has what people are going to do, to promise to do. I suppose you could call
But
those
that's what you're
demands.
promising to do. You're
Yes,
you're telling them, we want you to promise to do this.
it's right.
That's a
And so,
demand.
yeah, so I think, you know, if you did, you know that there has been in the past some treaties along these lines. I forget the name. There's a double-barreled name that came out of the League of Nations, right?
Yes.
To try to find something and to at least have an example of what it might look like would help people get more behind it rather than nothing at all.
Well, we have an essay. There is an essay on the website, Cheryl. I would appreciate if you could take the time to read it. It's, if you go to the PEP webpage, there's a menu bar that says treaty. If you would read that and say, is that adequate enough for what we need, or are you wanting more? Because what I come up against when I get these from other organizations is I will agree with the first 5 things, and then they'll say something with which I completely disagree.
But why do you disagree? What is it? It's really nothing to do with stopping war and not having conflict. Is it something to do, and nobody can even ever eat white sugar again? I mean, is it
No,
totally?
no. Well, I hate to do this, but because I know WILF is completely against NATO, okay? WILF wants to get out of NATO. We don't have anything to do with NATO. We have organizations and movements and marches to get out of NATO. Don't cooperate with NATO. I disagree with that position. I can't support that position. So if you demand that as one of your things in the treaty, then I don't want to be part of that.
Right. Well, it would probably say something along the lines of that, you know, offensive alliances between different countries are not allowed. You wouldn't have to name NATO because there are several alliances between countries that one could identify as being offensive.
Okay, so my first thought about that is that it's wishy-washy, which is fine. If the treaty is going to be written as wishy-washy, that's okay. But I don't see why we should get involved in writing wishy-washy statements for that. Cheryl, just do me a favor. Read that thing that says treaty and see if maybe we could pump it up a little bit. I know we needed some answer, and that was my answer to what would the treaty look like? How would it work?
It looked like Ellen Thomas had something to say.
I don't see her hand up, but Ellen, you want to
Previously,
say
it looked like Ellen was about to ask
Well,
something.
there's 2 things. One thing is, could you put the link to what it is that you want us to take a look at? Could you put that into the chat, please? The other thing is that,
I can do that, Judith. I'll put the link in.
Oh, thank you.
the other thing is, of course, you all probably, or most of you know about the voter initiative that we did in Washington, D.C., which led to a bill introduced into Congress. And so we put into that voter initiative the language that we wanted put in, and the representative or the delegate didn't want to use part of that language, and we negotiated it away. But we certainly didn't have any trouble having people sign the petition to put it on the ballot. So I just think that if you give something concrete for people to work with, it goes farther than just saying we want a treaty. You know, this is the kind of treaty that we want, I think, spelling it out. So, and I'm
Ellen,
supporting what Cheryl was saying.
if I could ask you, could you please come up with one of those for us? Could you devise one of those or find one of those for us? That would be much appreciated, and I can take a look at it and say, well, yeah.
Well, I
want
to take a look at what you've come up with and see if I have anything I want to add to it. I don't want to start from scratch.
There's a link now in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Sue just put.
Because it's not, I agree, it's a needed thing. I just don't want to, I don't want to be wishy-washy, and I don't want to put things that people in this country or this religion or that political persuasion, things that they cannot agree with. I want us to get this alliance together. It's not an alliance, a group of advocates for a treaty, and have those advocates come together and agree on what we should shape. And then we can put that on the website. I'm perfectly happy to put that on the website. But I think that that's the way it should start, not with PEP trying to come up with, or even copying somebody else's. Although I'm freely open to, if Ellen or Cheryl can come up with an example of a treaty that meets my criteria, which is it doesn't put other people off. No
Well,
religion.
Judith,
No.
I actually agree that PEP should do that. Should come up with a tentative treaty and then send it off to Cheryl and Ellen. I agree.
Wouldn't it be appropriate to do an outline for a treaty, not write a treaty, but just an
Yes.
outline of key points we want the treaty to include? In other words, and it isn't whether it's pro NATO or negative NATO. It's more about the things we'd have to do to stop international war. What are the consequences that need to be integrated into this treaty? So there's something that compels countries to abide by it. They can sign it, but they don't abide by it. And how do you get the countries that are most important to sign it, like Russia, anybody who has nuclear bombs,
Right.
or countries that are, run by despots? How do we get them to sign it? Because without them, we only have a partial treaty. So the key things have to be part of this outline, which would then, because I don't think we're in the treaty writing business. I think
Right.
That's
That's
my
governmental,
position.
you know what
I
I'm
am
saying?
not in the treaty writing business. I think it's an absurd idea that
That's
PEP
correct.
write.
That's why I'm saying that your long statement on the website that I posted the URL for goes through kind of the rationale and the reasons why and the things that have to happen, like enforcement and all that. So maybe we can put that in outline form, and that could be the simple way people could read what our true thoughts are and what the treaty should be based on. But the writing of the treaty and the discussion, all that has to happen within the United Nations or whatever, a governing body
Well,
for the
diplomats.
world, right?
Diplomats whose job it is to do
Exactly.
that.
And that's one reason, and Judith could tell you more about this, but one reason we're trying to reach out to parliamentarians, because that level of diplomat are the ones, a lot of them are in charge of disarmament for their countries. They're part of the government. They believe in peace. They're already on, the PNND group against nuclear weapons. They're already in that mindset. And they'd be ones that maybe we could work with, and they could construct a treaty based on what our basic outline would be. So at least that would be my thought about it. I don't know how all of you feel, but.
Well, I would say, as I've asked Cheryl to take a look at what is already on the website and make comments or maybe additions, and would you be willing to come up with your own outline for what you think the points that you think need to be in the treaty by doing some research or whatever you want to do?
Were
No,
you
I
talking to Sue or to Cheryl?
I'm talking to Sue now.
Oh, thank you. Because I have a lot of things on my plate at the moment.
Yeah, me too. But yes, I can do some research into it and see if there's a basic outline that I could send to key people
Yes, because
here, and we could then look at it as a
Right.
as a starting point, I'll call it.
Because so many of us, I do much better if somebody sends me something and I can.
Yeah. I'm a better editor than a writer, but I can tend to write as well. So I'll try to pull something together that we can at least, it'll be a starting point so people can make comments. We can make changes. It would just be a draft.
Okay, now my question is who's going to head that up? Who will pull it all together and keep us all together? It's not going to be me.
Sue He's going to start it.
Cool.
for us.
By the
Sue's
way,
gonna start
I
it
just,
and we need to send it out, and maybe, Judith, you can start a listserv for the people who are interested in helping out with it.
yeah, well, I would be willing to help do that. We have a person who's working with me on trying to get a mailing list situation going.
Well,
I
one thing I would suggest is that we don't open that up too much because too many cooks in the kitchen. I think
Right.
you have to keep the list narrow of people that are reviewing this and
Yes.
looking at it until we get we're happy with whatever draft we have. And then the question is what we do with that draft. Who does that go to? Do we post it on the website? What do we do with it? So that's the second
Yeah.
part of this.
Right. Mhm.
Janet has joined
Joined
us.
us. Jan-
I'm sorry you didn't see the movie, Janet, did you?
No, she's just arrived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your topic is right now.
Okay,
Diane, do you want to talk about it?
I'll just quickly say, Janet, it's about a project Enduring Peace, and PEP is the acronym we use. And we watched a video and have been talking about it. It's a goal. The goal is a peace treaty that basically, so we
Cool.
end war. And I don't think we have any more questions for you, Judith, per se.
I just want to say one thing, because I'm not sure whether what was put in the chat is the right thing, but I want to be sure it is. I just put in the chat the link to the thing that I want everybody who's interested in the treaty thing to read in the link. It's called Treaty.
You
And
need to-
everybody who wants to be discussing it needs to go and read that, and then we can work around that. My problem is I can see us spending a lot of energy trying to draw up a treaty, a list and a treaty, when what I want to put energy into is getting these peace petition parties going, getting people working on giving a party, not making another list.
Right,
Does that
well,
make
we're
sense to
suggesting-
anybody?
We're suggesting that people would be more interested if they had something, even a very rough idea what such a treaty
Okay.
might look like. I just think people would be more interested.
I know I would be.
I think
Okay,
it's a great
we'll go with
idea.
that. We'll go.
And a starting point might be that Kellogg-Briand Pact, which basically outlawed
Yes.
war.
Of course,
Thank you.
that's
That's
the
the
first
one.
place I was going to look. I've
Yes.
already I've read
Double-barreled,
through that.
double-barreled.
Yeah.
Okay, so great.
Maybe down the line, we can have another Jane Addams Zoom for a short session just to talk about this treaty thing.
No, it'll be email for right now, and then, yeah, maybe at another one.
Well,
We should
Diane,
have our own, we could have our own Zoom meetings. We don't have to
Right.
have Jane Addams meeting.
Right.
As I already, so I wanted to talk to Ellen real quick. Next month is John Steinbeck, but it's starting at 7:00, right?
Right.
Okay. And I'll be driving across the country, not all the way across, but
Is
to
that-
Okay.
halfway across. So,
is that the July the 16th?
You may have heard this, but it is now time to work on the new international program.
Yeah.
The International Congress will be next year around this time, it seems. The exact month even has not yet been set. If it's live, it will be in Cameroon. But if you don't already know, International is in deep financial trouble. We've lost, this year we have a budget of about 7 million Swiss francs. And what we have already confirmed for 2026 is 1 million Swiss francs. So there are going to be enormous changes coming. The International Secretariat proposed that we not change the international program for 2026 to 2029 very much. But I inserted myself and said, I think that's a bad idea because the political realities have changed so much in the last 4 years that we can't afford to go with the rather general and flowery language, in my view, international program that we have right now. I think we have to go back to our roots and focus on building peace and ending war. And Cheryl will remember, and I'm not sure who all else was involved last time. I think
Yeah.
Ellen and possibly Diane. But we did draft about 6 or 7 pages of a US section proposal for what ought to be in the international program. It was pretty roundly ignored.
Ignored totally, as far as I could tell.
Okay, I was being nice. Anyway,
And I should still
anyway,
have that on my.
it
on
seems to
my-
me, well, you know, sitting on the international board, I've been there 7 years nearly.
Oh,
You, the board is not all that interested. I would say the secretariat is not all that interested in being responsive to what members want. However, with the donors disappearing, I think we can have more effect internationally than we have had in the recent past. Because there's not going to be money to pay a lot of people's salaries. So what members are doing as volunteers is going to become increasingly important, as it should be anyway, you know, in terms of the way the organization functions, but it hasn't really been in the past. So, you know, this is an opportunity in horrible times to, I think, assert what we, the members, think is most important for international to pursue. International, it interacts with the UN a lot. And so it, you know, is, you know, flawed and in some ways ineffectual as the UN is, it's what we have. And it seems to me we have to be pressing there. So I am trying to encourage US WILPFers to put their heads together, people who run various programs, and I'm thinking here of Cheryl, and Disarm. It seems to me we've got to put together our ideas, and maybe the thing to do is to ask the folks who chair each of the programs of US WILPF to say, you know, what are your priorities? And put that together and send it in. We haven't gotten a specific call yet from the Secretariat to do that, but it's going to be forthcoming soon, because by fall there should be a draft of the new international program. So I invite you to go to the website of international and read what the current international program is. If you are interested, I can send you what we put together almost 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
As our suggestions. I think some of them will still apply. Yeah. So I don't know if people are interested. I'm willing to serve as the point person on this.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Janet.
Yeah.
So the just to fill us in, why did it go from 7 million Swiss francs to 1 million? Who is it that's not giving us money now?
Just all kinds of folks. You know, most of our money has come from governments, particularly Sweden, a lot less from Norway. Some has come from England, and some has come from Denmark. Sweden has been our biggest one, and I mean, really the biggest, several million. Also, we had a grant from the Oak Foundation, also a grant from the Canadian government, and that one is ending. Now, our new Secretary General, Amrita Kapoor, is, you know, going around trying to raise money. It's very difficult. All international INGOs are suffering now, particularly, the UN itself estimates that within a short time, about half of all women-led NGOs are going to disappear. That's how terrible the funding situation is. But WILPF has operated with very little funding, for most of our lives. It's just when Madeline Reese came in to be our Secretary General, we had big contacts at the UN and with organizations that were donors, and she was able to get some of that funded in our direction. Before she left, just now a year ago, she told us it's going to be hard, and the kinds of things we have been getting funding for, namely particular projects, there are going to be very few donors interested in funding projects. They might be interested in funding our core operations, the basis of what WILPF does. Yeah, so some folks who went to the Commission on the Status of Women at the UN in March tried to make some contacts. And so there are some possibilities. We will probably get some money from Sweden, but Sweden has moved to the right, way to the right. Not as far as we have, but for Sweden, they've moved to the right. And so they're cutting way back on aid type funding. And that's true in most places. So, there are people who are saying WILPF may have to fold, and by which they mean international. And unfortunately, international holds the right to the name. But it seems to me that we don't have to accept that fate. We can, at the time when, I just spaced on her name, the woman who died a few months ago, who at 101, 103, come on, help me folks, what's her name? Who was our Secretary General for many years, for
yes,
decades.
We know who you mean, but we can't remember her name.
Names go away. A lot of the time when she was running the office in Geneva, it was just her and another person. Sometimes that other person was half-time. And this might become our new reality for a while. We can do it.
Yeah.
We don't,
the million
at our height, we had 51 employees. And that's down some. A few people.
Oh,
What were they doing?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. We have, they were managing our projects. We had this big project funded by the Canadian government on demilitarizing masculinity. And I can't tell you a whole lot about it because we on the board never got very good reports about it. Anyway, Canada was interested in doing that for a while. We have projects in Syria. We have a project apparently in Yemen, although we don't get reports about it. There's been a lot of money that came from Sweden and Norway that went towards projects in the so-called Middle East. And I think most of that is going to be drying up. Well, 6 out of 7 million are going to be gone, so probably. Anyway, it's time for WILPF to, restructure in a big way. And that's okay, isn't it? I mean, I think the thing is not to disappear.
right. That's important.
I think that that's what we have to say is no, we're not going to disappear. We're not going to, we're going to have to move away from this model that says international NGOs hire professionals to work for them and pay them big salaries, generous salaries, shall we say, and, move back into relying on our own resources. It's just looking like that. Yeah, Judith has her hand up and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and just say to Janet that I'm sorry that you missed seeing our video, because I really believe and have thought always that this project, Enduring Peace, or PEP as we call it, has the potential to be international. It is built to be international. It's all digital. It's all on the website. If they have access to the internet, they can watch the video, they can sign the petition. It even has a word translation feature built into the website. And it has a very clear goal that millions and millions, that everybody on the planet can join into one thing, focused on one thing. That's been the problem with peace movements, in my view. They don't focus on one thing. They focus on a million different things, and therefore they are divided and conquered. I think if we could focus the entire peace community on the idea of getting a treaty to end international warfare. It gobbles up so many resources. It kills so many people. It poses
well, it seems to me that
enormous existential danger. It's the kind of thing that is by nature international. And if WILPF could get excited about it, if the WILPF leadership could get excited about promoting this idea of advocates, a group of many organizations, that all of which, not just peace organizations, but all organizations which are advocates for getting a peace treaty, that would be a wonderful cause for WILPF International to take up.
okay, that's a great proposal, and it's something that ought to appear in our sections proposal for,
Good.
you know, what should we be up to in the next, from 26 to 2029.
Good.
Should be there. But you have to understand, what I have learned on the board is that the folks in the secretariat, you know, they were hired to do particular jobs, and everybody is, of course, now protecting their own job as much as they can. And that just ain't gonna work, you know, with a budget cut by as much as it has been. Right now, people are working 4 days a week instead of 5 to meet the shortfall we have for 2025. We'll be able to meet that. But 2026 is a whole complete other thing. But I think what we have to do is get our sisters in WILPFs around the world interested in returning to our roots, which is to work for peace. And because in my view, and I hate to say it, but on the board, it's not like we got a lot of things explained to us in any kind of depth in the 7 years I've been there. But there's kind of an assumption that we have to get project funding, not core funding, not funding for our core goal to end wars and to demilitarize. No, we look to see who's funding what kind of projects, and then we apply for them. And then we get that money, and then we hire people. That's sort of how it has worked. With that gone, it seems to me this is the perfect time to push to return to our roots. And I don't know, I think that who will follow along with this kind of proposal are old timers who knew WILPF before it was very wealthy for the last 10 or 12 years.
I need you, Cheryl. I don't know what you're doing and why you have to keep doing it.
Así es la vida, Cheryl.
Sorry, just a minute.
Okay.
My husband needs me to help him write his eulogy for his sister.
Okay.
It's unusual. Usually when I did fundraising, they didn't want to fund core operations. They wanted to fund projects. So yes.
Seems to be
then you get in the
reversed.
pickle you're in, which is people are tied to those projects and they don't want to give things up. Yes, I understand.
And
All
so a lot of our staff are kind of, you know, project-oriented people.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and some people are shifting into other areas they hadn't been in. But we're going to lose a lot of staff. There's just no doubt about it.
All right, well, thank you for that explanation. Disarm, we'll see what we will talk about this.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
I'll put something on the next disarm agenda, okay?